All right, let's jump straight into this explainer. Today we're dissecting ISO 14001:2026, and we're going to be looking at environmental management directly through the critical lens of a lead auditor. We aren't just going to sit here and talk about theory today. No, we are going to completely tear apart the anatomy of an environmental management system, or EMS, to see exactly how it functions in the real world. It really begs the question, are your company's green promises actually built to survive a rigorous audit? Or is your environmental policy just, well, a paper tiger? We're going to explore that inherent conflict between what corporations say they're doing for the environment and what an auditor actually uncovers when they show up. Because, look, it's incredibly easy to make green promises, but ISO 1401:2026, it's designed to be the ultimate lie detector. It demands hard, verifiable evidence that an organization's environmental commitments are truly operational. So to really understand this framework, we'll quickly cover 6 key areas: defining the system boundaries, the leadership commitment, authorizing the policy, assigning roles, setting measurable objectives, and finally, integration into business processes. Let's get into it.
Okay, Section 1, defining the system boundaries. The golden rule here, you absolutely cannot manage or hide what you exclude.
You can think of the EMS scope kind of like the skin of a living organism. It represents the absolute physical, organizational, and operational boundaries of your entire framework. And guess what? Auditors immediately look right here for any significant environmental impacts that management intentionally tried to leave out, just to make their compliance a little bit easier.
Here's a classic auditor war story for you: justified versus unjustified exclusions. You have justified exclusions, like leaving out an independent administrative office that genuinely has no significant environmental impact. Totally fine. But then you have unjustified exclusions. Imagine a company claiming totally green operations while artificially excluding a highly polluting outsourced logistics warehouse that sits just outside the physical EMS boundary but is completely under corporate control. An auditor is going to flag that immediately as a major nonconformance. You simply cannot hide your dirty operations just outside the fence line.
Moving right along to Section 2, the leadership commitment. This is literally the heart and brain of the EMS.
Under Clause 5.1, we reach the core driver of the whole system. And there's a stark contrast here between a fake, symbolic endorsement and actual, demonstratable leadership accountability. Symbolic leadership is just delegating compliance entirely to some isolated eco-manager, while the C-suite completely ignores it. Under ISO 14001:2026, leadership commitment must be highly visible. Auditors want to see the CEO integrating environmental metrics directly into corporate strategy, resource allocation, and financial planning.
Which brings us to Section 3, authorizing the environmental policy. This is where we move from generic intentions to explicit commitments. This is the exact pivot point. When a formal environmental policy document is digitally authorized by top management, it highlights explicit, ironclad commitments to pollution prevention, legal compliance, and continual improvement. That digital signature isn't just some ceremonial click, right? It proves explicit organizational accountability. Generic intentions become a binding oath right here. Without this visible documented authorization, the entire system literally lacks authority. And that digital authorization, it triggers 3 non-negotiable commitments that have to be integrated directly into the business. First up, the prevention of pollution, which means proactive measures, not just, cleaning up spills after the fact. Second, the fulfillment of legal compliance obligations, ensuring every single permit and regulation is systematically met. And third, the continual improvement of the EMS itself, proving that the organization's environmental performance is actually getting tangibly better year after year.
All right, Section 4, assigning roles and authority. These are the muscles moving the system.
Under Clause 5.3, auditors are actively hunting for authority gaps, because there's a massive difference between responsibility and authority. Responsibility is executing the task, like monitoring air emissions daily. Authority is having the actual power to allocate resources, like approving the budget for new filtration systems if those emissions are running too high. If you assign someone the responsibility to monitor a problem, but you don't give them the authority to actually fix it, that is an immediate red flag for an auditor. It means the system is structurally broken.
Now for Section 5, setting measurable objectives. This is all about transforming those promises into trackable outcomes.
To make sure action plans aren't just, vague wishes, ISO 14001:2026 requires organizations to define exactly what needs to be achieved, who is responsible, how it's going to be implemented, both technically and operationally, and exactly when the results are expected. Just saying, we want to be greener, doesn't cut it anymore. It has to be a granular, accountable project plan.
Because at the end of the day, objective success has to be measurable, and it needs to trend downward over time. Take volatile organic compound emissions, for example. An auditor wants to see that your action plans are actually producing verified quantitative results year over year, like dropping from 50 tons down to 15 tons. If your objectives lack these hard quantitative parameters, you simply cannot prove to an auditor that you're continually improving.
Finally, Section 6, integrating into business processes, breaking out of the environmental silo.
Listen, an EMS is not just some heavy binder sitting on a dusty shelf in the compliance office. It is a living, active business process that has to influence everything. It dictates your procurement and supplier selection. It influences product design, production, and maintenance. It drives logistics, and it fundamentally alters strategic financial risk management. Think about it. If your purchasing department is out there buying cheap, highly toxic chemicals just because they're completely unaware of the EMS objectives, your system is not integrated.
Taking a broader life cycle perspective guarantees you aren't just obsessing over the factory floor. Manufacturing might only account for, say, 40% of an organization's total impact. If your EMS completely ignores the 30% coming from your supply chain or the 10% from end-of-life disposal, you're missing the bigger picture that ISO 14001:2026 demands.
So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought to really chew on. Does your leadership signature actually carry operational weight? Take a hard, honest look at your own organization. Are you simply greenwashing with generic policy statements, or are you actively operating a rigorous, auditable environmental framework where true authority, measurable objectives, and deep business integration actually thrive? Because ultimately, that is the true test of an environmental management system.